Today, it's Edwin's Monday evening property rant. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics, where I've noticed posts covering finance and property news with a distinctively Australian flavour. It's another Monday evening, and of course, Edwin joins me once again. Hi, Edwin, how are you doing?
Oh, man, I'm on top of the world. A little bit high, working with fiberglass, but
it's got quite a whiff.
It does, mate. It does. I've always enjoyed working with fiberglass since I was younger, and I had to use fiberglass because the fish pond, the first one that we were building, that the waterproofing that was recommended failed. So I had to scrape that back, and I was thinking as to what product to use to cover it up. And I thought, you know what? I just can't get myself some fiberglass. Just fiberglass the whole damn thing, and I'm on top of the world.
Very good. Well, it's probably a good antidote for the current world, actually, given everything that's going on.
Oh, look, Martin, it's a crazy world out there, and as you and I keep on saying, can it get any crazier? You know, from the ridiculous to the surreal or the bizarre. It's just amazing. But look, I've got it on good authority though that ScoMo is going to use some TikTok influencers to help him out for the upcoming elections, and the CoreLogic are also going to use some TikTok influencers to help prop the daily hedonic indicators up because they're falling at the moment.
Yeah, it is interesting. I thought ScoMo had a TikTok account that sort of was a bit blank at one stage, but maybe that'll come back. I mean, obviously, to reach the younger generation, TikTok's the place to go.
Look, that's right. Even even our mate, what's his name from Russia. Right? I mean, he's even reaching out to China as well. Isn't he? Putin. He's reaching out to China for allegedly for
weapons,
for more more support. But look, I guess what we've talked about in the past, and we've talked about before, that China just going to sit back. They are the winners. Either way, they are the winners. They're sitting back and they're just watching it all unfold. And whichever way it goes, China are the winners. But they've got their own internal issues themselves. That we'll discuss a little bit more later on as we talk about what the WeChat chatterers from mainland China and the local chatterers are all are doing. But as I said earlier on, Martin, can this world become any more surreal? I mean, it's going from the surreal to the bizarre to the ridiculous. I mean, World War III looming in Europe, natural disasters, skyrocketing fuel and energy, food prices and shortages. Recession could have even end up going into a global, depression. Who knows? China is in major lockdown, as I mentioned a bit. We're going to talk about later on. They're in a major lockdown, so that's going to has its own ramifications on the world economy and what's and even our economy and the construction industry here and what we're hearing. And what's the answer to all this, Martin? I'll give you one guess. What's the answer to all this? What's Australia's answer to all the issues that are happening around the world?
Simple. Let's build some more apartments.
Spot on, Martin. You must have read my mind, or you must have read my notes.
Well, it is crazy. I mean, the amount of lobbying that has been over the last couple of weeks to say, we have an upcoming supply shortage, particularly of high-rise. We need to build more, etc., etc. It is laughable if it wasn't so serious.
Look, it's incredible. I was looking at a mate of mine that's over in the Sunshine Coast, looking at some off the plan stuff for him and his wife, and I said to him, "You're mad. Yeah, absolutely mad." And but anyway, each to their own. And he's sending me some of the brochures, and I said, "Look, it all looks great on on glossy paper. It all looks really great on those artistic impressions and montages. They look great on glossy." 130 GSM cardboard. It looks, fantastic. But at the end of the day, what you got to do is you got to go and look around the area and see what else the builder has built over the years, and the developer has developed over the years as well, and look at the historical, the history that the builder would have in that area. Otherwise, stay away from it. But I guess more to the point is the answer is all these apartments, not only in Sydney but also in the Sunshine Coast, the Gold Coast, and they say even Melbourne. I mean, build to rent. It's all a farce, and it's what for? What's rather than really putting in some real infrastructure, rather than preparing for what's around the corner, preparing for for our future, as opposed to just the political party's future, but for the nation's future, the people's future. I mean, I don't see it. And when I talk about preparing for the nation's future and the people's future, I'm talking about infrastructure. I'm talking about real infrastructure that is going to be supporting people's work, jobs, lifestyles in the future. Hospitals, infrastructure out west, rail networks, and the road networks, and albeit even go green, whatever you fancy, but put some real serious infrastructure in place rather than just building apartments left, right, and centre. Because look, like I guess I'm a little bit high on the fiberglass fumes and the resin and everything. I guess the politicians are even higher. It's like because on the stamp duty and the money that brings into their coffers.
Well, of course, there is this economic argument about generating more value in the economy, but it is nuts. And by the way, that 130 GSM, right? Those card prints. I reckon that's probably more structurally secure than a lot of the high rises themselves.
Yeah, look, throw them in the water and at least they float. Whereas some of these buildings, they start to sink. It's one of those things. And I still think that Opal Tower is still sinking, but hey, that's another story for another day.
Well, look, I've decided that I want a refund for 2022. Right. I don't like this year. I want to send it back and get another one.
Look, you and how many tens of thousands of mortgage holders that are looking at their wallets and that are looking at the bank accounts and looking at the price that they have to pay now for the lifestyles that they chose to live in the mortgages. I mean, you brought out a video earlier on. Make it stop. I call it being tied up to a torture rack. Would have been a better get into your video there, Martin, because that's what it feels like. These poor bastards are absolutely tied to a torture rack, and they're just being stretched. It's not only the wallets that are being stretched, but they themselves, people themselves, individuals themselves. The partners, both partners, or the single partner. I know a lot of young families that. They've only got one source of income. They've chose to live that way. They've got a mortgage. Some have started just to build their principal place of residence. Others are halfway through. Others are on the tail end. But you look at what they or you hear and you listen to what they're going through, and it just brings tears to my eyes to see these young families go through this. They don't need to go through all this, but here we are. And that video certainly it was an eye opener in terms of your statistics and what's happening. We're only just talking about 2 in 5 families that have got a mortgage are in mortgage stress. I mean, that's incredible. And now we've hit even a higher point as of February this year.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, it is astonishing to think that we've got 10% more households in stress difficulty than before COVID. Right, which is remarkable, right? And then you think about the large size of mortgages that have been handed out recently. The mortgages on average 20% bigger than a year ago. But the thing that really struck me, I went to the CBA mortgage calculator and I put in a mortgage at 1.99%, which was probably the best rate you could get, right?
Yep.
And then I put the mortgage rate up to 2%. And then 3%, so let's go to 3%, right? That was 15% higher monthly repayments, right? 15%, right? And then I went to 4%, and that was a 30% rise in terms of the actual monthly repayment that people are going to have to find. Now, that is scary. And then you think about the size of the average mortgage in Australia, particularly in Sydney and Melbourne, where they're much bigger than they were. People are really going to be crushed by this if we even get a small rate rise.
It's incredible to note. Even adding to that, I guess, is also the what came out today. I mean, SPC and the price rises to the canned goods. I mean, it's going to be from anywhere between 10 and 20%. So we've got these families that are going to go from baked beans and spaghetti and for hungry little human beings, as somebody put on Twitter, it's going to be for starving little human beings in the future, because what are they going to eat? What do you go down to? I mean, we say off the cuff, some people are on the breadline, regardless of the fact that they own a mortgage. That you can't say that they own a home or a property. You really say that they own a mortgage, and they're already in strife. So all these issues now, petrol's now gone up, fuel's gone up above the $2 mark. Even my specialty stations around Sydney that I've got to know, where they're always sit 20 cents or so below the main petrol pumps and petrol stations. Even they're above the $2 mark. We've got a diesel and in a petrol vehicle as well. So now I'm forced to take the diesel. I don't like to drive it. I prefer to get around town in the sedan. But now I've got to drive around in the diesel, because that gives me a lot better mileage, and it gives me a lot. The tank goes a lot further. Now I'm thinking this way. Let alone these young couples or the families that have just gone into a mortgage, as you said, that are 20% higher than 2 years ago, and they're paying just put everything else, all the income just about goes into paying off the extra that they're going to be that they're being asked to pay by to put food on the table and everything else. I mean, what else have they got? There's no disposable income, and then you've got rate hikes that are proposed to around the corner. And how much more pressure is that going to put on these poor bastards that believe the government and took on these special grants, special gifts, packages, and everything that just got sold a lemon. Frankly, that's the way I see it.
Yeah, well, I think it is, and we were talking about this over the last year or so with all of these bribes. I mean, there were bribes, but they were designed to support the construction sector, and the fact of the matter is that many banks, when they made their lending decisions, would assume that people would really reduce their expenditure. But of course, those are unrealistic expectations, particularly now with costs rising so high, and fuel, as you say, and other costs too, and even things like childcare costs, they're all rising. So households really are up against it. Now, obviously, what the banks will try and do is to renegotiate a longer term for the mortgage, right? Because that's about the only thing that they've got left. Or they might switch to interest only for a period, which is what they did through COVID. So I'm expecting the banks to start doing that, because, of course, it's good for the banks, because it means that they actually get more interest over a longer period of time. And it also means they don't have to declare those mortgages as bad mortgages if they can restructure them in some way. So I expect to see a whole bunch of mortgage restructuring offers and propositions going on at the moment. But that's just masking the problem again. It's not actually dealing with the fundamental issue, which is that properties are just too highly priced relative to incomes, and people are too extended. And the longer this goes on, the more pressure there are going to be on households. And ultimately that pressure leads to either having to sell the property or hunkering down dramatically, which is not good for the broader economy, as well as, of course, the social impact and the psychological impact of all this. And so you're seeing confidence levels amongst consumers continue to fall, and that's very bad for all sorts of reasons. We've dug ourselves this really deep hole. I'm blaming not those individual borrowers, because they were dancing the tune that was being played, but I do blame the regulators, I do blame the government, and I do blame the banks, because they are out for their own interests, not the interests of those borrowers.
Look, that's right. And adding a little bit more to what you just mentioned there, which you've covered a lot of ground there, Martin, and it's so true, because we sometimes just think of the brick and mortar. We forget about the actual psychological effect and impact it has on the psychological, physiological effect that it has on these families. You've got, as I was saying earlier on, you've got young families or families that have just got themselves into a mortgage, or they've dropped one income, or they've dropped hours, or the business is just barely surviving. So they're putting very little on the table by way of food and nutrition. So you got to get this future problems that the nation's going to be faced with, with regards to health issues. What's to evolve out of this? I mean, it's just going to be an anorexic society. Hence, my mind goes back to what we discussed earlier on, earlier this year, with regards to the year of the tiger. And the year of the tiger is an ominous year, because it's not a very good year in the Asian calendar. It's not a very good symbol, and it doesn't reflect well in the culture, in that belief. And and this is just playing out. I guess one of the things that we've got to also differentiate with mortgage stress, and that's mortgage stress and delinquency. And as you said, Martin, I too am of the opinion that the banks are going to put in something. The government with the banks are going to bring something along to soften that, to cushion that blow. So it goes from mortgage, so that it won't go from mortgage stress to delinquency. But outside of that, and delinquency could take, as you and I know, particularly now, anywhere between 2 to 3 years before properties really people get forced to put the principal places of residence on the market. What I do see is that a lot of people that are facing distress, they're looking at selling out, and they will, they're saying, well, I could get my money back, including the stamp duty, because of the little bit of rise that they may have gained over the last year or so. So they're able to step out and go into a rental home. And there's another conundrum, going from a principal place of residence where you used to live in, now going into a rental home. Find a rental home. Find something that's decent, that's decent and rentable, which is something that we're going to talk about later on in the show as well. I mean, it is just one massive quagmire that the government has allowed us to fall into, and it's just I just visualize people. There are some people up to their ankle deep in that quicksand. Others are knee deep. Others are waist deep. Others are neck deep. Others you could barely see the hand raise their hand up. You could barely see their hands because that's so far deep. It is just one huge mess that this government, and I dare say these all the opposition, they're all the same. But that's another discussion for another day. But I don't know what the answer is, Martin, other than if you're going to be looking for rental, if you are going to be looking for a property and you're going to go into high deep in terms of LVR, I highly recommend venture a little bit further out and get yourself. You may not have all the your dream needs and wants, not so much needs, but your wants that you're aspiring for right now. But you will have that piece of land where you can build a home, not just have a property, but you can build a home and be a little bit more sustainable and be more dependent on yourselves than on everything else and that's happening around you.
Yeah, no, it is tricky. And, I've said consistently that people, when they actually think about committing themselves for a mortgage, need to do their own calculations on what they can really afford, what they can truly afford. You don't take the word of the bank, who our only interests are risk management issues from their end. It's not really the same as looking from the household perspective. And sometimes just because you can get a very, very large mortgage, it's not necessarily the right thing to do. Sometimes getting a smaller mortgage and being more comfortable makes a lot more sense, particularly with the level of uncertainty. And, with inflation now predicted to be a lot higher than was previous, thanks to what's happening in the Ukraine and all of the sanctions and everything, and also the fact that interest rates look as though they're going to go up The Fed's probably going to put rates up this week, which means that the banks are going to be under some pressure in any case because of funding costs. It means that there are going to be more pressures on households and interest rates. So I think cautious, conservative is the watchword. And if that means you have to buy a smaller place, or a place that's further out, or a place with not quite the attractiveness that you'd like, so be it, because it will actually stand you in much better stead into the medium term. So many people that I've seen in my surveys committed within the last 2 years, and now they're actually really under the gun. And in fact, the ABC did an interview with me today. It'll be go out, I think, later in the week, when I was talking specifically about those in stress who've transacted within the last couple of years. And a lot of those are really feeling it now.
Oh, look, definitely. And they will, because I dare say, and you'd be a better person to clarify this one, but I dare say that most of the people, 8 out of 10 that transacted over the last couple of years, transacted at very high LVRs. And that's a telltale sign that if the market shifts, there's going to be major stress, major pain felt. This is the reason why myself and my team we help people, even if they are looking at a high LVR of a 90% borrowing to get into the market. We try to look for something that's got an upside. You've got to look for an upside. Regardless what people want to buy, we can't stop them from buying. We get the wish list, we get they give us their mandates, and then we just go out. But we always look for something that will help them in a system that if the economy of the market turns, they can be buffeted somewhat, or there's an upside. But anyway, again, it's been caution.
Absolutely.
Moving forward.
And I always say, run the counterfactual. Don't just assume everything is going to run perfectly for you. What happens if? What happens if there's illness, or the job disappears, or whatever? Right? How long can you survive? And a lot of the people who are in stress have almost no other savings or assets available. So, within a month or two, people can get into really serious difficulty. So it is important to plan ahead. Now let's move on, Edwin, and talk about the WeChat chatter, because there's a lot going over there in China as well, isn't there?
Oh, look, there is, and that's also obviously going to be reflective of what's going to happen here, and in how it unfolds, how things unfold here, and the way that people have got to move forward with regards to taking a lot of their observations, or our observations, on hand, and when they're making a property decision to either buy or rent. So with regards to the China chatter, it's rather interesting that we're not hearing a lot of. Zero Hedge has brought out some a few things from time to time that touches on because a lot of it is suppressed. A lot of this information is suppressed. So we get it from sources, from internal sources, and so we're able to put this out freely to our followers. So we've got more lockdowns happening in China due to the Krong 2.1 than what the Western world would like to note, and that's going to have an effect. And I dare say that's also going to be an excuse that some governments, and whether it be state or local or national, federal government, are going to take that on board, and they're going to start making But like I put out on Twitter, is that going to be the excuse to send the listing numbers to in retreat again, so as that to save the price plunges in certain areas, because at the moment there's a lot more listings coming on. So who knows? So we've definitely got a lot of issues there that are happening in China with regards to the Krong 2.1. There's a lot of lockdowns in a lot of the major cities, and a lot of the in a number of the industrial main industrial cities. And obviously we also got to understand that when they're affected with anything, whether it be a pandemic, disease, or some sort of a bug, they're very highly populated cities, unlike the way that our lifestyles here in Australia, whether no matter what state you're in, we're not as densely populated. I mean, the whole population of Australia could fit into one of the main cities there in China. So we've got to take that on board as well. And the other issue there was also that they don't really have Medicare like we have here. They don't really have that readable access to medical assistance and help like we do here. That's in mainland China, but also there's a lot being happening in Hong Kong. So what's one of the things that we have also been hearing from our migration lawyers and agents is that there's a lot of people wanting to come over, but obviously taking on board what ScoMo and the government want them to do is to come over to on the study visa. But these are going to be fictional study visas. They're just going to end up turning into what we call the ghost migrants, on coming to study, but really go out for work. The little brothers and the little sisters that end up labouring in the building industry or any other industry that would take them on board, and they're going to be pretty much being paid cash on hand. So that's unfolding there. One of the things, the ramifications that's going to bring out, obviously that's going to impact us even more, is going to be the supply chain issues. They're only going to get worse, and base products are going to become more and more scarce with coming into Australia to support our small manufacturing sector and the construction industry as well. So things are going to get more expensive with regards to building, with regards to medication, and anything else that we're depending on China to supply the base products for us to keep going. Packaging is going to be, I think, it's going to be a bit of an issue. Moving forward, but no toilet paper. So don't go out and raise toilet paper, because we do pulp timber here, and we do have control over toilet paper. For God's sake, don't go out there and start, beating down the shopping centres for toilet paper. So that's in regards to mainland China, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the issue about the COVID, that's in a high-tech era, isn't it? That it's actually sort of raging at the moment, which means that some of the high-tech things that normally would happen. I know Apple have just said that some of their production facilities in China have actually closed because of the COVID resurgence. So again, it goes right back through to what you're saying. That's going to have a very significant knock-on effect in terms of some of the high-tech stuff that you might want to buy next year, or even soon.
White goods. Even white goods, all that sort of stuff, because it's getting more expensive. And look, the way I'm looking at things, Martin, is quite frankly, if and this is a big if, but worst case scenario, if the US somewhat sticks their nose in where it does. I mean, not that it stops them anyway. They stick their nose in a lot of things anyway. But if they go a little bit deeper than what they have been involved right now, and China come in with a little bit more support to Russia, well then that's going to even be a different dynamic altogether. And we can whistle Dixie if we're going to get anything at all from China. So. The second-hand goods are going to go through the roof. Hence the reason why we spoke about the rise of the garage sales. I think that's going to be a market of the future.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, we said some months ago, prepare to buy stuff now because you won't be able to get it later, and I think that's proving to be true. What about the local chatter? What's going on there?
Well, the local chatter is rather interesting. They're going hell for leather on or hammer and tong, whichever analogy you want to use, whichever. But they're going hard on looking for homes that potentially have dual occupancy potential, meaning a house with a granny flat, or something that already has a house and granny flat. Or they could, something that's all, got that dual income potential, because they can see that the future in terms of the security for their investment asset is going to be more on land, which is what we've been saying for a while anyway. But that's just heated up over the last week or so with the local chatter. So they're looking out for dual income properties, homes. They've turned their back on apartments altogether, and they're also, there's another group that are got a lot of chatter about fixing their homes that were used as boarding homes for the little brothers and the little sisters, the ghost migrants. They came over in the past and would rent, each room or a bed in a room, especially the homes that had 4 or 5 bedrooms, and they could basically break them up into multiple dwellings. So boarding homes, the illegal boarding homes. So they're going hammer and tong fixing them in order to put them into the rental arena to cater for the local Aussie families, and there's a lot of chatter around that. So they're looking hard, for. You're going to see a lot of Asian people at auction houses that have got secondhand good household goods such as tiles and vanities and materials and that, because they're going hard at fixing, remodeling those homes in order to put them into the rental market for the local families. So in a way, that's good. That we'll get some more homes in some of the affluent parts of Sydney, in like your Chatswoods, your Eastwoods, your West Pennant Hills, Hurstville's, and those areas where there is a shortage of decent homes. So because again, they got a lot of them got taken out to cater for these the ghost migrants that were coming in from China. And for the students and the accommodations, they're also fixing a lot of their apartments that catered for a lot of the students that came in from China. They're fixing them to put them on the market, and that's the chatter for the local people.
And I guess that's one of the reasons why the listings are behaving like they're behaving, right? Which is surprising. Now we're well into the the quieter season normally, right? But in fact, listings are still they're pretty strong, aren't they?
Look, they are, Martin, and it's so we said last week for the next couple of weeks that we're going to keep a very close eye on the listing numbers, and again they continue to defy the historical trend, which is receding numbers, but they're only going up. The difference between the morning, the snapshot that I took on the morning of the listing numbers was at around 10 past 9, and the snapshot that I took in the afternoon was around 5:15, just before I tweeted it out. I took that snapshot, and the difference in listing numbers from morning to afternoon on a Monday are very close. Now, what that means is that there's a lot of let's say 400 or 500 homes on average would have been sold on the weekend, but typically you see that's reflected on the Monday listing numbers. You see a greater gap between the morning and the afternoon as listing numbers fall away. They get taken off the portals, are sold, and they get archived and to make way for the new ones. But the gap is so small. The other thing that's really very, very interesting, which you and I said from about 3 months ago that we're going to really keep a close eye on, is the apartment numbers. Yep. They're hardly changing at all, Martin, in terms of from one weekend to the Monday. In other words, there's not a lot of sales happening in apartments, and the apartments on market are just continue to grow. And in comparison to last year, it's chalk and cheese.
Absolutely. And the other thing that I keep getting from people who've trying to sell their apartments is they're having to cut the price. They're having to take a hit, because if they're to try and shift it, because there's more and more coming on and more similar properties, particularly in some of the high-rise sectors. So they're actually competing with other apartment owners who are also now getting more and more worried and are trying to bring their property onto the market too. So it's a sort of a mutually reinforcing decrease in price, right? And it's going to be a chase to the bottom. So no surprise then when we look at statistics that we actually see some price drops.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, and this is the stupidity of the government. And they got this fanfare and they beat their chest, promoting the 25,000 or so, build to rent apartments that are on the go. I mean, it's unbelievable to compete with the local investors. Anyway, it just defies logic. This world just gets crazier and crazier. Yeah. So our statistics, the first snapshot we're looking at is basically Parapower. And he says, he writes, CoreLogic Daily Price Index Sydney dropped again, highest weekly, 0.23 minus negative 0.23 fall observed in 18 months. That is, so, and let's keep in mind that these numbers, they're really lagging, although they say it's daily, but they're really not taking into account the fact that there's a lag. So I'd say they say that that the actual are a lot higher, and there's a lot more pain coming in the preceding numbers or daily hedonic index daily accounts that we're going to be getting moving forward, because they're lagging best case scenario by about 8 weeks.
Yeah, that's because, of course, it's got to be settled, right? And it takes some time for that all to work through the system. So you don't really see it until it's landed. So what we're doing here is going to look into time machine effectively as to what happened a couple of months ago, right? So the expectation is that we will continue to see prices slide.
Definitely, and it's going to become more and more apparent. So therefore, the BS percentages or weekend auction clearance rates and everything, that's just BS, because it just means nothing really in the sense, because it's really, we don't know how many vendors were actually forced to sell at a much lower price in order to because of the agent's pressure of saying, this is the price on the day. The auction dictates the price on the day, and therefore, and there's a lot of pressure put on the vendors, and especially with all the mainstream media headlines going on now, so they'll be susceptible to that rather than hold on and try to get a little bit more by way of private treaty post auction. They'll succumb to that pressure. And hence the reason so-called steady auction clearance rates that the doc and they may keep on pumping. But interesting in statistics also look at Tarek's posts over the weekend and what he sees, and obviously he's very strong on the Fed, which you spoke a little bit earlier on, the rate rises and the hikes, and he's calling it pretty much March a 90% chance of 0.25 hike, May 53.7 chance of a 0.5% hike, and June 28.6% chance of a 0.75 hike. So, but better than a 50-50 odds of a 0.5% hike by June. And hence why you and I say, look, if you're going to get in, you better make sure that you've got a lot of reserves, in your tank, or a big reserve tank, in order to overcome what's around the corner, to buffer what's coming your way.
Yeah, and there's two things to think about. The first is, if the Fed does lift, and they probably will this Thursday, that's going to put pressure on the international financial system, and a lot of the banks fund a lot of their books from those capital markets, so they're going to probably have to pay more for doing that, which means that's going to put pressure on their margins. Plus, of course, the Reserve Bank continues to resist the idea of lifting rates, and in fact, last week, Phil Lowe was still saying, well, it's probably later rather than sooner. But he did actually make 2 points. The first is, the chances are that there will be potentially a lift at some point. And secondly, he talked about preparing and making sure you got some buffers. It's interesting that those are the words now coming up from the Reserve Bank. So like it or not, the environment has changed. The next movement in rates will almost certainly be higher, and therefore plan accordingly. And, the Fed is probably not going to do 50 basis points. They would have possibly without the conflict in Ukraine, but with the uncertainty there, they'll probably be a little bit more cautious and coy about it. So it may be that the market is overstating some of these upward movements. But on the other hand, inflation is absolutely booming in the US, and the only lever that the Fed really has is to actually lift rates. So you would expect to see more rate rises. And by the way, inflation here in Australia is likely to be much higher than the RBA previously predicted, and that's because of those international forces flowing into the local economy and basically just moving the price of everything up. So I'm afraid inflation is going to rage, interest rates are going to go higher, and all the things we talked about earlier on in terms of stress will come through. And going back to stress, Michael Yander from the ABC is actually doing the show. I mentioned that he recorded with me on Monday, I think on Wednesday, and I think he's looking for some other input. So it'll be interesting to see how he builds a story around this and to what extent he relies on my data versus not, and whatever inputs he gets. But, it's totally plausible now to say that mortgage stress will go higher from where it is now because these interest rate rises are coming. And the other factors, the high inflation, the income growth being very benign at the moment, and all the other factors that we've been talking about, and the level of confidence fading is all playing into this. That's one of the reasons why I think property prices are still going to go further south.
Oh, definitely. And it's going to be very, very, very interesting. Like I said, my caveat on that also on that discussion with regards to the falls and how far and everything. Obviously, this is taking a very position on the listing numbers on market, because if they retreat, then we'll get a Mexican standoff. And then we've got, and then we don't know what the government's going to do with regards to the migration and how quickly they can get the PR visa holders of those three sectors that I keep on pining about, the medical, the IT, and the financial professionals that are ready to come in, and they're coming in with very with deep pockets. So how quickly or how the government's going to incentivize those professionals, it's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds. Or is it going to be a grenade thrown at the state governments again to lock us down? With the fear mongering, with the other Krong 2.1 that's ravaging China. That's ravaging China and Hong Kong at the moment. So we don't know. But what we're seeing right now is that more and more each week we're getting more and more listings on market, which is putting downward pressure, which is a good thing for buyers, for our clients. It's a good position to be in, not necessarily for the mortgage holders that just got in recently, or that bought the wrong property and they didn't buff it. They didn't prepare for what was to come around the corner and hit them square and smack him in the face because they didn't do the due diligence and relied on the person building reports from the selling agents.
Yeah, and I guess I should be interested to see whether any of the indices, the property indices, suddenly take a breath, right, and say, "Oh, we're just recalibrating." Yeah, has been known, hasn't it?
Oh, look, definitely, and Lindsay David gets on that one real quick. I think he's got an insider, Lindsay, in the CoreLogic. He must have an insider, because even before they publish it, he already tweets it out. 4 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, it's out. He's first cab off the rank there. And apart from that, Martin, it's with these natural disasters, or should we really say bad management, as opposed to the natural disasters, or because it's natural that these things are happening. If it's bad council, state, government management, is really that. I mean, it's building on floodplains. How quickly we forget.
Well, it is amazing, isn't it? Because you and I have been talking for a number of years about the risks of building on floodplains. And guess what? We saw over the last 2 or 3 weeks significant floods, significant property damage, but this was predictable, right? This was absolutely predictable. And I get a little bit annoyed when people say, "Oh, this was 1 in 1,000 years. It was never expected." Well, hang on a moment. If you build on a floodplain, right, what happens to floodplains when it rains?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And they're building the natural causeways. I mean, I've looked at so many properties in natural causeways that are. And you got to look at the way that they're being built. I mean, a slab on the ground, and you've got the actual natural water causeway running through the middle of the backyard, and there's only a step about so high between the grass area and in the porch area, and then there's a small step up into the lounge room. I mean, it's crazy that how the building, and then not only that, but then then people start building all sorts of garden beds and putting all sorts of shit around the home, and in concrete, racing the concrete around the home, and then the water just travels. It's got to go, and then the falls aren't right, and the falls back into the side of the home, and it ponds there, and it just seeps through the brick. All sorts of. I see it all every day, Martin. But going back to what you just mentioned earlier on with regards to what people been saying to you, or the whinging. Well, show them that that table that Twitter put up, and I thought that was rather interesting. Holy, what's it? FUQ_LE point. Puts out the gauge of the highest to lowest. Flood levels in Lismore, and you only have to look at the years as to when Lismore flooded. From going back to 1954 was the highest at 12.17 meters. Then as recently as 2017, where the water rose 11.59, and I mean seriously, what's going? We seem to forget, Martin. You seem to forget, unfortunately. Catches a lot of people. Catches a lot of people on the with the pants down.
And I always say to people, when you're buying a property, one of the things to do is to look at the flood maps. Most councils have significant flood maps which show you where the 100-year marks are and things like that. Right? Look at those. That will tell you what the risk is. Right? And it amazes me how few people actually go to bother to look. Basically, unless they're on the coast and they might look. But, any property, it's worth checking the flood, right? The fire, the crime, those are pretty much fundamental things. And all that information is available online for free.
And you only have to refer back to the name of the suburb, Martin. The ponds, cow pasture.
Yeah, it's a bit of a clue, isn't it? And it's also just worth noting, there was one particular property that had a huge washout in front, right? And if you go back and just follow the clues, you can see that when it was built, was it 2007 or something, right? There was a lot of filling going on, right? And that's the other point to understand, that there's a lot of construction where effectively the plots are filled to make them level, et cetera, But if that's not done well, you can then get a washout, and those washouts can be quite significant. And interestingly, even today, I was listening to somebody earlier on saying that there was a pothole in a street down the road, right? Now, that was actually a water main, right? But it shows you the power of water to take away loose material, right? It is very, very, very powerful. And so it's really important to make sure that you do the right checks, to make sure that the construction mechanisms are actually appropriate for the area. And frankly, just building on a sort of a plane of concrete, hoping it'll be right, ain't going to work.
No, it's crazy. So when I saw that Twitter post of that house, 7 Guy Place, with the washed out driveway in front, pretty much the front yard, the whole front just about gone. I'd say structurally that house is now unsound. And they'll be demolishing it. That's my call just from looking at the photos. But when I saw that, I quickly went to historical listing of that home, and then you could see. And then you do a Google map search, and then you do a satellite view, and you see where it is, and it's surrounded by, obviously by the natural causeway, natural reserve. You can, from Google Maps, you can see that the land falls away. All around them. So then somebody, as I was doing that, then somebody tweeted out. One of the tweeters, put out that got a snapshot of a historic, a satellite view of the construction and the amount of backfill. So when you look back from that to the actual current photo of the of that home with a driveway that's just with a landslide. I mean, I'm looking for shoring. I'm looking for how they were looking at taking the water away that was just pooling around there. You look at the backfill. It's not even it just looks like plain old dirt. It's not not compacted. I mean, there's no containment areas there that would take the water away, like ag line or anything to basically take the water away, so you can flow rather than soak into that loose soil and cause all this. Given the fact that to the left of that photo, you see the actual drop of that natural causeway around that property. So and then I think back on all those backfill areas in the suburbs, around the northwest region and the southwest region, Martin, and it starts to become really scary as to what's going to happen in the future. And here's the big one as well. Let's say we get 3 years, 4 years of very light rain, or like what we had in the past, like the 6-7 years of drought that we got, and the ground starts to shrink. That creates another problem in itself. Expansion and contraction and all sorts of stuff started happening to the constructions.
Absolutely, that's right. And of course, it's that cycle of wet years and dry years, which really creates the long-term problems and will create cracks that then actually get worked on the next time there's moisture, and so it goes on. I mean, I think people need to understand that this is a very active environment. And, if things are not built properly, if they're not built to the right standards and don't have the right drainage, et cetera, they will ultimately fail. And the cost of correction can be huge. And obviously, if it fails in the wrong way, it can be actually disastrous. So, unfortunately, again, we have to underscore, make sure you get decent research done on any place you're thinking to purchase. Make sure you get a proper report of the property and the land that the property's on, right? Make sure you understand the way that it was constructed, and then do the research as well in terms of things like flood and fire, those sorts of things, so that you actually know what you're getting into. Because it is so easy to get caught up on a nice sunny day when you see the property in the blue sky and the birds singing and everything looks wonderful. But you've got to ask the question about how well is it constructed, how well will it stand up to dry years or wet years, et cetera, because that asset can become an absolute liability if, in fact, what you've got is a lemon.
Yeah, and they've got scented candles throughout the whole property to mask the mold.
never been done, Edwin. Never been done.
Because of all the water that sits under the bloody house, and you're paying, and you're bidding, upwards of $3 million. I've seen it all. It's just one of those crazy things, Martin, that you just see it over and over again. And you and I have been on this world for a long time, so it goes around in cycles. There's nothing new under the sun. I think the scented candles just get a lot better.
Well, that's right. Yeah, they seem to have more sophisticated whiffs now, but it doesn't really mask it very well. Now, let's talk about the other one, which is really also interesting too, and that's the point that a lot of rental properties are coming up to their use-by date. Now, that's a very significant issue too, isn't it?
Very much so. And this is something that I posted out and retweeted and tagged you on it to have a small discussion there. And as I said, there are a lot of rental properties are coming to the use by date, meaning there's a lot of rental properties out there that have come to age because the way they were built. They didn't use, let's simplify it. We didn't use strong timbers. We used basically pine rather than hardwoods. You use your treated pines, treated pines in order to create, make the framework. You've got your concrete tiles as opposed to terracotta, which would repel the water a lot better and maintain that impermeability a lot better. You went to concrete, which once they lose the shininess, the coat, the lacquer that they put on top, then they just become sponges and absorb the moisture. And then your roof trusses are basically, taking on, 1.5 times the amount of weight that it would normally take. So then all sorts of things start happening. So and over the years, obviously with the dampness, with the climate, the changes, the wear and tear, bad construction, I say that a lot of rental properties are coming to the use by date. And this is where the regulators are starting to pay attention to a lot of this, because a lot of the rental market, the people that are renting are obviously, they have a very strong voice, through different organisations, and they've got a very good platform, which is good on them. And this is why I say that a lot of investors that have got older properties that are 30, 40, 50 years old, they're looking at selling. And the only reason why they haven't been on the market is, I dare say, is because often the case, from what I've been hearing from a lot of the agents, I've been talking to a lot in the mountains, is because of also the rain that we've had over the last 4 or 5 weeks. So there's been a lot of delays. So we're going to see a lot of these older properties that investors are not putting money in to fix, to rectify, to deal with the issues such as asbestos, old water pipes, galvanized pipes, all the issues around homes. They're not fixing them. They're going to go on the market either as is, or they're going to clean up a bit just to so people can, because it's better for them to sell than it is to, the maintenance cost is just going to be again taxing on their bottom line, and the investors that are holding on to a lot of these homes, retirees as well, Martin. So they're also making that lifestyle change themselves.
Absolutely, and it's worth interesting highlighting that in my surveys, as well as mortgage stress, I look at investor stress, right? And I measure investor stress quite a bit differently, as well as the cash flow problem. I also look at whether they're actually trying to sell or intending to sell. And then you ask them why are they intending to sell. And the number they're actually intending to sell because of the structural issues that are coming up, and they know they've got, particularly with the new regulations, means that it's better to get out rather than to try and fix them. So we're going to see a lot more properties from ex-rental sources coming on the market with potentially significant defects over the next little while. So once again, the same message has to be, if you're going to buy one of those, do your due diligence.
Oh, look, definitely. And I'd send you there a screenshot of. There are things that you won't be able to see, such as the old galvanized pipes. That photo that I sent you of that galvanized pipe next to the new copper pipe there is of a rental property that that was owned by an old friend, and I out of Parks, and I helped to do a little bit of renovation around the place. And when and that was one of the things that I said in order to get you need to get your property up to speed, we need to get a plumber in and start looking at the plumbing services, because I could tell by the nature, again, the age of the property, the age of the surrounding area, the whole thing. It would have had to looked at. It had to be looked at, and that's the so for. You got to ask yourself, how long were the previous tenants, the owner just didn't want to maintain the property that she bought it from. But you got to ask yourself, how long were people living in this home? And look at the galvanized pipe there next to the new copper pipe there, Martin. Look at how rusty it is. I couldn't find the other photos. I actually broke that up in half, and you see all the crap and all inside internally. It's amazing the water even was able to flow through that pipe. It was just so, there was so much shit in that. It was amazing, and yet people were drinking. That was the main inlet into the house, water inlet into the house. So if you were drinking from the kitchen sink, straight out of the kitchen sink, you've got all sorts of goodies down your throat into your stomach.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, you've wondered why the taste of the water was a little odd. Now you know, right?
You get a lot more nutrition, man.
Well, that's probably true. That's right. The next thing will be dead possums and things like that, but I won't go there. Okay, tip of the week, Edwin. Tip of the week is?
Look, just for now, look, don't look back, regardless of what's happening around the world, globally, locally, in your backyard. My tip is don't look back, keep looking forward, keep on preparing. Unfortunately, things are going to get worse before they get better. There'll be more shortages coming. One of the things that's going to definitely we're hearing a lot of from our legal eagles around the place, in the that deal with the criminal side of things, with lawyers that we've come to know over the years, criminal lawyers and that are representing people that have come into strife, is that crime is on the rise, and there's a lot more. There's a lot, and that's only going to get worse as people have greater needs. So, moving on from that, the tip that I have for this week is secure your homes. Look at better security for your homes. Look at better security for yourself, in terms of being more vigilant around your family, and also your investments, whatever that may be. Look at securing it all. If you've got investment properties, add the security in there so you can get better tenants as well, because they will appreciate a higher level of security, because they will also be thinking of the rising crime rate. And you only have to watch different things that are being posted all over the place with regards to the drug and all sorts of crime that's happening out there, and people are going to get a lot tardier. They're going to get a lot angrier with a lot more economic pressure about the place.
No, I think that's a very good point on which to end the show tonight, Edwin. You've got to take responsibility as best you can for your own circumstances and situation. And I think security and making sure that your locks are working and you remember to lock the doors and things on the way out, all those things, and make sure that if you've got a burglar alarm, make sure it's working. Simple things like that can be very, very significant. And unfortunately, I think we're going to see more trouble ahead. I guess the other point I'd add to it, just say people don't panic. Take it one day at a time as well, because I think sometimes we can get a bit submerged in all of this doom and gloom. The sun still rises, and the day starts. So try and keep a sense of balance would be what I'd add to this as well, right? So, celebrate some of the good things that are still going on as well, because there are some good things around, family and friends and those sorts of things. And in the case of my particular environment, dogs, celebrate the dogs you got, because they actually make up for a hell of a lot. So, be a little bit careful, but also be a little bit positive as well, insofar that look for the good as well as the bad.
Definitely, and that's something that will help us. In terms of securing, also secure your health. Be more active, like you said, Martin. Your dogs. You go out for walks. I go out there, work on the veggie beds. They're not producing as much as I would like them to produce, but I'm learning. I enjoy building them, and it's physical work. I enjoyed the bricklaying. I call it bricklaying. Others call it all sorts of other things. Building the fish ponds, all that sort of stuff. It's getting out there, smelling the fresh air and doing things. So be vigilant. In looking after yourself, looking after your home and your family, and be very, very vigilant. I'd say things are going to get a little bit tardier in shopping centres. Unfortunately, I just see so much out and about, and because I'm out on the road a lot, I also see a lot of people say tents on the road. So keep calm, and when the sun rises, smile. And when the sun sets, hug your loved ones and enjoy the indoors.
Yeah, Edwin, thanks for that. And as always, great conversation for a Monday evening. We'll do it all again next week, and by then, who knows where we'll be there? But we'll be back anyway.
Well, definitely, and by then, hopefully, I'll have the first koi pond filled and raring to go. Let's see how I do.
Okay, I'll hold you to that. See you next week, Edwin. Cheers. Bye-bye.